right? So I think one of the major things that have happened recently, I mean, in Malaysian politics, there's always something major, is Khairy's expulsion from his party, which was, it seemed like it was coming, but it was coming since a long time ago, right? So what happened there? And if Khairy, whom I think you know personally, or you've interacted with him before, if he asks you for advice, what will you tell him?
If he asked me for advice, I'd probably fall down flat in shock. But so I've interacted with him. I wouldn't consider him, or he wouldn't consider me a close friend, just to be clear. But so I actually think he was not just pushing back, but he was really cocky about it, which is not at all out of character. He is more of a risk taker than many in Malaysian politics, in the sense that he's very much put his own desire to move ahead quickly ahead of the norms of the party and the norms of political contestation in Malaysia. And that was so absolutely obvious. I mean, it's never been far below the surface, but it was so obvious in his campaign promises to be the next PM, which I assumed, and actually was fortunate to have the opportunity to ask him about this, where I was shocked at the answer. I assumed that was a coordinated strategy among the sort of young Turks of UMNO, the youth gang and so forth, who wanted to start a new direction with Khairy at their head. But no, he said it was just a spontaneous decision on his own part, and he just hoped people would go along with it. And of course, I was thinking at the time, I don't think UMNO is really game to go along with that sort of thing if you haven't worked up. So I think that was really the issue, that this hadn't been so much a coordinated effort as a solo one. And UMNO just tends not to reward that level of individual initiative, especially when somebody else, which is inevitably the case, is threatened by it. So in that sense, what I would advise now is he's been very consistent in proclaiming that he is still fully on board with UMNO, even if they've kicked him off the boat. And so I would say he needs to find a new party. He is correct in saying that starting a new party is probably not a useful strategy. That it's just the system isn't designed to accommodate that. He'd be wrapped into a coalition anyway. He would be in the same position that Teh Tarik is, for instance. Probably Keadilan would be his best bet. That would, and we can get to that, but that would really depend on whether Anwar sees him as a threat or as useful. But at least then he could run still in Singapore, in the same constituency in which he's been trying to build up his brand. Although that would mean displacing, existing PKR members.
So much in there. So, yes.
You sent a question in advance. I had hours to think about
it. No. That's fantastic. So firstly, why would Pakatan Harapan or PKR be the natural choice, and why not PN? Why not Bersatu, which is UMNO 2.0 or UMNO 3.0, right? And secondly, yes, you mentioned whether Anwar would see him as a threat, right? Then what about the other people who are waiting in line as well, like people like Rafizi? Would they be too pleased? As in, genuine question, would they be pleased having him, somebody of his stature in the party, or would they see him as a threat internally as well?
I think both. I think he could bring in votes. He could possibly bring in seats. He would allow them to attract Malay voters, which they've wanted. And, again, something we can come back to, Pakistan has not been excessively consistent in its alliances and so forth. So the sort of ideological divide might not be a huge deal. In terms of Bersatu, though, I think the issue is PAS. I really can't see his fitting well there or being able to rise. And even, I have my own doubts, which I'm sure others also have, about whether Bersatu will be able to maintain its supremacy in terms of leadership vis-a-vis PAS in long term if Perikatan sustains itself. And so that really just doesn't seem to be a good fit for him. And in some ways, some of those in Bersatu are kind of are so old style UMNO that also may not be a comfortable home for him. And so I think it's really, if Bersatu moves out on its own away from PAS, then perhaps, but then also there's no future. So, it's a hard choice. In terms of Keadilan, I do think, Anwar would probably have some doubts, but he's PM, that's what he wanted, so he can now be gracious. I think you're right that those like Rafizi would probably push back, but that might be for Anwar a way of splitting the opposition to him or the upstarts. So maybe there's some strategy there. So it's really a question of Keadilan is known for being very much Anwar's vehicle that he has a strong control over. So to some extent, it may not matter that much if there's grumbling amongst the next ranks of leaders. And to an extent, it's a better fit for him. Not entirely. He's very much a creature of UMNO in all sorts of ways, but so are many in Keadilan, especially with the sort of removal of some of the older multiracial guard from the Reformasi days.
Thank you for that.